Welcome to the Jasmine Podcast.
So, if you want to understand how a culture really operates, you should probably look at how it teaches its language.
Oh, absolutely.
Because, you might think a grammar lesson is just about memorizing rules or like figuring out exactly where to put a verb in a sentence.
Right, the boring stuff.
Exactly. But sometimes a really simple language exercise accidentally unlocks this entire philosophy of how we live.
Yeah, how we consume things, how we experience the world.
Yes.
Yes.
And so if you are prepping for a meeting or maybe just catching up on a fascinating topic, or honestly, if you're just insanely curious, you are in the exact right place today.
You really are.
Because today, for our deep dive, we actually have a very specific focus. We're going to take things at a nice, moderate pace.
A very relaxed vibe today.
Totally. We're using highly accessible, clear vocabulary. So this deep dive is perfectly designed for English learners.
Or, anyone who just appreciates a really relaxed, deliberate unpacking of ideas.
Right. We are really taking our time to understand the concepts on the table today. So what are we looking at?
Well, we are looking closely at a specific source. It's an episode from a show called the Jasmine Podcast.
Okay.
And this particular episode is titled How to Spend a Great Holiday. And it's part 2, specifically focusing on sightseeing and food.
Sightseeing and food, the best parts.
Exactly. And it features these 2 podcasters, Mark and Sarah. They are analyzing a trip to Rome that was taken by their friend Lily.
Right. And, on the surface, it really just sounds like a very straightforward listening exercise.
It does. But as we break it down today, it actually reveals itself as this dual masterclass.
A dual masterclass. I like that.
Yeah, because it teaches the mechanics of the English language, sure, but simultaneously it's questioning the entire modern philosophy of travel.
Which is so interesting. I actually like to think of this kind of language learning as being handed a souvenir of words.
Oh, a souvenir of words. That's a great way to put it.
Right, because that feeling of going on a trip and bringing back a little object to remember the place.
Yeah, like a magnet or a mug.
Exactly. And when you learn a language through someone else's travel stories, you get to experience the warmth of Italy,
You can almost smell the espresso.
Yes, the physical reality of the streets. But you also get the mechanics of English grammar handed to you at the exact same time.
It's highly functional. It's a functional memory.
It really is. So where do we start with Mark and Sarah?
Well, to truly appreciate how this souvenir works, we have to start right where Mark and Sarah begin their show. We need to look at how they bridge the gap between their previous lesson and this new one.
Ah, right, because this is part 2.
Exactly. In part 1 of their series, their entire focus was just on rest.
Right, they talked a lot about sleeping in.
Sleeping in, taking it easy, doing nothing.
They basically spent a whole episode establishing that a great holiday is defined by doing absolutely nothing at all.
Yeah, just completely recharging. But here in part 2, they make a pretty hard pivot.
They really do. They transition from that idea of a relaxing stationary holiday to the very active exploration of Lily's Roman adventure.
And Mark frames this transition explicitly for the listener. He says that travel is one of the best ways to learn new things and see the world.
So he shifts the definition of a holiday right there.
Completely, from a state of passive rest to a state of active learning. And to illustrate this, they introduce Lily's trip to Rome, Italy.
And Sarah immediately calls Italy her dream destination.
Right, which sets a very specific aspirational tone right out of the gate.
It really does.
Yeah.
But she doesn't let you just, sit back and daydream about eating gelato by the Trevi Fountain.
No, she gives her listeners a highly specific grammar mission.
A mission. What does she tell them to do?
She literally says, listen for the ed sounds.
The ed sounds, like at the end of a word.
Exactly. And this is a foundational technique in language acquisition. Because verbs, they're the engines of a sentence.
They're the action words.
Right. So by instructing the listener to focus specifically on those ed sounds, Sarah provides a physical, audible marker for the past tense.
That makes so much sense. She takes this abstract concept like things that happened yesterday or last week and turns it into a sound you can actively hunt for.
A grammatical treasure hunt, essentially.
I love that. A grammatical treasure hunt. And the way Lily actually delivers this story is so key to the exercise.
It is. The notes in the audio explicitly state that Lily speaks very slowly and clearly.
Very slowly, which is deliberate.
Oh, highly deliberate. It's essential. because when native speakers talk at a normal or fast pace, that ed at the end of a word often just gets completely swallowed.
Oh, totally. It just blends right into the next consonant.
Yeah, so a phrase like I walked around just becomes a single blurred sound. I walked around.
Right, you can't even hear the D.
Exactly. So by speaking very slowly and clearly, Lily separates the words. She creates acoustic space between them.
Which allows the learner to actually grasp the foundational elements of storytelling in English.
She builds the narrative brick by brick.
You can actually hear those bricks snapping into place when she sets the Roman scene. Like, she says the weather was perfect, warm, and sunny.
A classic start to a travel story.
Very classic. And then she describes her morning routine. She says, every morning I walked around the old streets. I visited the famous Colosseum and many museums.
And there they are. There are those exact sounds Sarah warned us about.
Walked. Visited.
And Mark and Sarah don't just let that slide by. They reinforce it immediately after Lily speaks.
They isolate the words for the audience.
Yes. They point out that she traveled, and they physically spell out Traveled.
And they note she visited museums, and they spell Visitted.
They are using her story as a vehicle for orthography. They're showing exactly how the past tense is constructed on the actual page.
Okay, but let me push back on this method for a second here.
Sure, go for it.
By forcing a speaker to slow down so drastically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then constantly stopping the story to spell out words letter by letter, do we lose the natural emotion of a travel story? I mean, usually when someone comes back from a dream destination like Rome, they are talking fast.
They're excited.
Exactly. The words are tumbling out. So does breaking a vibrant memory down into this slow, hyper-enunciated grammar lesson strip away the magic?
That's a fair question.
Or, I don't know, does it actually force the storyteller to be more mindful about the specific actions they took?
I would definitely argue the latter. It forces a really deep structural mindfulness.
How so?
Well, think about fast speech. It often rushes past the physical reality of an experience. When you're excited, you gloss over the details.
Right, you just say, oh, we went to Rome, it was great, we saw everything.
Exactly. But when Lily is forced to say, I walked around the old streets, and she has to place equal weight on every single word.
It anchors the memory.
It anchors it completely. It makes the physical act of walking feel heavy and deliberate.
It allows the listener to process not just the fact that she was in Rome, but the specific sequential actions she actually took to experience it.
The emotion is not lost at all. It is just distilled into clarity.
It stretches the memory out so we can actually walk alongside her.
Mhm.
I really like that perspective.
Yeah, it's very effective. And once Mark and Sarah establish how Lily tells her story grammatically, they transition seamlessly into what she actually did.
Right, moving from the grammar into the actual content.
Exactly. The conversation moves from the mechanics of the past tense into the philosophy of how we occupy a foreign space.
Which brings us to the act of sightseeing.
Yes, they focus directly on this. Mark literally spells out the word sightseeing.
And he defines it as visiting the famous and interesting places in a city.
Right. And Lily's itinerary was exactly that. The Colosseum and the museums, the absolute center of the tourist map.
And this is where Mark introduces a really fascinating tension in the deep dive. He points out that some people label this kind of activity as touristy.
Ah, yes. Touristy. That is a very heavy word in modern travel culture.
It definitely carries a negative connotation, right?
A very distinctly negative one. It implies that visiting a highly popular, crowded location is somehow an inauthentic experience.
Like you aren't doing it right if there are other people around.
Exactly. It suggests that a true traveler should seek out hidden, undocumented places, while only a mere tourist goes to the Colosseum.
But Mark defends the act of sightseeing completely. He totally rejects that snobbery.
He really does. He says, famous places are famous for a reason.
Which is such a vital reminder. I mean, the Colosseum is not famous because of a clever marketing campaign.
No, not at all.
It is famous because it is a staggering architectural achievement with, thousands of years of brutal, complex history baked right into its stones.
Right. Avoiding it simply because other people also want to see it just deprives you of a fundamental human experience. Mark is basically arguing that there is absolutely no shame in being a tourist.
Be a tourist. Look at the big famous building.
Exactly. Embrace it.
But of course, participating in that experience brings up a very modern complication.
The photos.
Yes, the photos. Lily admits in her story, she says, I took hundreds of photos because everything was so beautiful.
And this introduces the classic screen time dilemma.
Sarah notes that phones are just ubiquitous today. We all have these high-powered cameras right in our pockets.
But she actually defends the instinct to use them. She points out that on holiday, taking photos is a special attempt to capture the memory.
And it makes total sense.
Yeah.
You are standing in front of something overwhelming, something you may literally never see again in your life.
And your immediate human instinct is to freeze it.
Exactly. You want proof that you were there, and you want to possess a piece of that beauty to take home with you.
However, Mark introduces a necessary counterweight to Sarah's defense here. He observes the behavioral cost of this instinct.
The downside of constantly capturing.
Right. He warns that people often spend more time looking at their screens than actually looking at the beautiful buildings.
And Sarah agrees with him on that. She says you have to find a balance. Taking hundreds of photos on a beautiful trip is like trying to bag up the ocean to take it home.
Bag up the ocean.
Yeah, imagine you're standing on this gorgeous beach, right? And you have a stack of little plastic bags, and you're just frantically scooping up the water, scoop after scoop.
Okay, I see where you're going.
You are working so hard to capture the ocean that you never actually feel the waves hit your legs.
Wow, yes. That's a perfect image.
At a certain point, the act of capturing the experience entirely replaces the experience itself. You just have to stop bagging the water and swim.
That physical disconnect is exactly what Mark is highlighting in the source. When you stare at a screen, your field of vision naturally narrows to just a few inches.
You lose the periphery.
You lose the scale. You are mediating the Colosseum through this digital filter, rather than letting the actual texture of the building impact your senses.
You are prioritizing the future documentation of the moment over the present reality of the moment.
Which means you aren't really sightseeing anymore. You are sight collecting.
Sight collecting. That is a great way to put it.
Yeah, it changes the whole dynamic.
So after exploring this visual consumption of the city and the barrier that screens create, the Jasmine podcast moves to the literal consumption of the city,
They shift focus to Lily's lunch routine.
which offers a really stark contrast to that screen-heavy morning she had.
Because eating provides this incredibly immersive sensory experience that demands your physical presence. You can't phone in eating.
You really can't. And Lily says she always tried something local. Specifically, she mentions thin crust pizza and fresh pasta.
And Mark zeroes in on that word, local. He isolates it and spells L-O-C-A-L.
And he defines it practically for the learners.
Right. He says it's food that belongs to a specific place. And he uses the examples of pizza and pasta in Italy and sushi in Japan.
He uses geographic context to really cement the vocabulary.
Exactly. It's very smart teaching.
But Sarah pushes the conversation a bit deeper. She asks a question that basically challenges the entire premise of culinary tourism.
Oh, this is the fast food debate.
Yes. She asks, why not just go to a fast food place we know? Why is local food so important?
And Mark has a very visceral reaction to this idea.
He is horrified.
Totally horrified. The mere idea of traveling all the way to Rome and then eating at a global fast food chain, he just can't handle it.
He mounts this incredibly passionate defense of local food.
He bases it on 3 distinct points. First, he argues that avoiding local food means you are entirely missing the culture.
Okay, yep.
Second, he describes food as the flavor of a country.
I really like that phrasing. The flavor of a country.
It's very evocative. And third, he states that eating local means you're actually tasting the history of a place.
Tasting the history. And he sums up this entire philosophy with a phrase that Sarah absolutely loves.
He calls eating local food an adventure for your mouth.
An adventure for your mouth. It's so playful.
It is, but it also frames eating not just as mere caloric intake, but as this active exploratory act.
Right, like a thin crust pizza in Rome is not just bread and tomatoes.
No, it is the result of centuries of agricultural practice, the specific regional climate, generations of technique.
It is basically an edible artifact.
An edible artifact, exactly.
Let me ask you this, though, because I was thinking about Sarah's question.
Okay.
Mark frames global fast food purely as a missed opportunity, right? Like it's just an absence of culture.
He definitely does.
But is the appeal of fast food for some tourists actually about seeking a safe anchor in a totally overwhelming environment?
A safe anchor. What do you mean?
Well, when you travel, everything is new. The language, the currency, the street signs, the social norms.
It's exhausting.
It is a state of constant sensory overload. So doesn't a familiar fast food burger just offer a temporary psychological rest? Like a 20-minute break from the adventure Mark is demanding.
That is a very valid point. The cognitive load of travel is immense. Your brain is working overtime just to process all these unfamiliar stimuli.
Right. Just ordering a coffee can be stressful if you don't speak the language.
Exactly. So seeking a predictable, highly standardized environment like a fast food chain, it's actually a natural psychological mechanism to reduce that cognitive strain.
Because you know the menu?
You know the menu, you know the ordering process, you know exactly what the food will taste like before you even take a bite. It requires zero mental translation.
It's safe.
It is safe. However, Mark's argument is that this comfort is actually a trap.
A trap.
Yes, because the friction of translating a foreign menu, the slight risk of ordering something unexpected, that friction is where the actual learning occurs.
Oh, I see.
If you retreat to the familiar, you insulate yourself from the very environment you traveled so far to experience.
So the adventure literally requires a willingness to be a little bit uncomfortable.
Exactly. You have to lean into the friction.
And Lily leaned into that adventure. She ate the pasta, she tasted the history. And after that sensory-rich morning and that heavy lunch, her day logically winds down.
Which brings us to her afternoon.
And this introduces arguably the most critical concept of this entire deep dive.
We move from the physical exertion of the sightseeing and the sensory input of the lunch to a state of almost complete stillness.
Lily describes her afternoon so simply. She says she was just sitting in a small cafe, drinking espresso and relaxing.
And Sarah immediately identifies this. She says it sounds so Italian.
Because the cafe culture in Europe is very distinct from what we might be used to.
Oh, completely. It is not about grabbing a coffee in a paper cup and rushing back to the office to sit at your desk.
No, it is about actually occupying a space, watching the world go by, and just letting time pass without feeling guilty about it.
But you know, the physical setting is really secondary to the mental state Lily manages to achieve here.
This is the big revelation.
Yes. She states very plainly, I didn't check my phone or emails at all. I felt so free.
I felt so free. That declaration of freedom is profound, mostly because of what it is reacting against.
Exactly. She does not feel free simply because she is in a beautiful foreign city.
Right. She feels free specifically because she severed her digital tether.
She cut the cord. And Sarah acknowledges how rare this actually is. She notes that avoiding emails is so hard to do these days.
We are totally conditioned to be constantly responsive. Like, if the phone buzzes, we have to look.
We're Pavlovian about it. And Mark uses this exact moment to introduce the final crucial vocabulary word of the episode.
And what is the word?
Unplugging. U-N-P-L-U-G-G-I-N-G.
Unplugging.
And he deconstructs the word by providing its physical metaphor. He describes it as literally pulling a plug out of a socket.
The physical metaphor is so vital here.
It represents intentionally cutting the flow of information, disconnecting from the internet and from work.
Because when a device is plugged in, it is constantly drawing a current, right? It's constantly humming with energy from some external source.
Right, it's always on.
But when you pull the plug, it goes quiet. It relies only on its own internal battery.
That is exactly what Lily did to herself. She went on to internal battery mode.
And Sarah articulates the psychological stakes of this action perfectly. This might be my favorite quote from the source.
What does she say?
She says, if you are checking emails, you are still at work in your mind.
Wow. Yes. If you are checking emails, you are still at work in your mind.
It's so true.
Because the physical location of your body is completely irrelevant if your attention is captured by a digital stream that's originating thousands of miles away.
You can be sitting in the absolute perfect Roman cafe with the perfect espresso in your hand.
But the moment you read a work email,
Your cognitive environment instantly shifts back to your office desk.
the stress hormones release. The mental checklist activates.
Technology has essentially created this permanent mind-body disconnect. It is exactly like bringing your boss on your romantic holiday.
Oh gosh, what a nightmare.
Seriously, imagine finally sitting down at that small cafe table, feeling the warm Italian sun.
Sounds lovely.
And then you pull up an extra chair, force your boss to sit right next to you, and ask them what the quarterly projections look like.
It is totally absurd when you put it like that.
But that is precisely what we do every single time we open our inbox on vacation.
We invite the boss to the cafe.
We do. And Mark and Sarah conclude that this deliberate disconnection, this unplugging, is the actual secret to a great holiday.
Because without that digital tether, Lily was able to be 100% in Rome.
Her mind and her body were occupying the exact same geographic space at the exact same time.
Which is a rare luxury these days.
It really is. So we have tracked Lily through this incredibly dense day.
We've covered a lot of ground.
We saw the slow, deliberate grammar of her morning walk, We analyze the conflict between seeing a famous place and capturing it on a screen.
Bagging the ocean.
Bagging the ocean, exactly.
Yeah.
We unpack the cultural weight of local food versus the safety of fast food, and we explored the ultimate freedom of pulling the plug in an afternoon cafe.
A full, perfect day.
So how do Mark and Sarah wrap up this exercise, and what does it mean for us as learners?
Well, Mark's reaction to Lily's story at the end is very immediate and very human. He just says, I am so jealous.
Which is super relatable.
Very relatable. He recognizes the immense value of that unbroken attention Lily managed to achieve.
But they do not end the podcast on a note of envy, right?
No, they immediately restructure the conversation to look forward. They tease the audience for the next installment.
Keeping them hooked.
Exactly. Mark announces that in part 3, they are going to talk about different styles of holidays.
Styles of holidays. What does he mean by that?
Sarah provides the contrast. She notes that not everyone wants Lily's busy city experience. She says, some people want mountains and some want the beach.
It is a very logical expansion of the topic.
But Sarah also makes sure to ground this expansion back in their primary mission.
Yeah.
She promises that while they discuss these different styles, they will also provide practice exercises.
Reminding everyone that this is, in fact, a lesson.
Yes. It is a reminder that this whole philosophical journey through Rome was, at its core, a structured learning environment.
They're managing the listener's expectations.
Right. They use the allure of Rome to teach the past tense, and they will use the appeal of the beach to teach new vocabulary.
But this introduces a bit of a structural question about how we view travel in general.
Okay, what's the question?
By categorizing holidays into these distinct styles, a lazy holiday in part 1, a sightseeing holiday in part 2, and a nature holiday in part 3.
Right.
Do podcasters or travel writers inadvertently force us to choose a strict travel identity?
A travel identity.
Yeah, like we start labeling ourselves as purely a beach person or a museum person.
Oh, I see.
Does that categorization restrict us rather than just letting a holiday be a messy combination of whatever happens on any given day?
That's interesting. But I think it comes down to how the human brain processes information.
Oh.
The brain relies on categorization to organize complex data. In an educational setting, grouping vocabulary by theme-like beach words versus city words is highly effective for retention.
It makes it easier to memorize.
Exactly. The danger arises only if we internalize those educational categories as rigid personality traits.
So if you decide, I am strictly a mountain person.
Right. If you do that, you might avoid the friction and the subsequent adventure of navigating a dense historic city.
But you tell yourself, well, that's not me.
Precisely. The goal of learning these different styles is not to lock you into one identity. It is to give you the descriptive tools to navigate all of them fluidly.
You learn the vocabulary for the beach and the vocabulary for the city, so you have the freedom to change your mind.
You have the words for wherever you decide to go.
I love that. Let's synthesize what we have unpacked today.
Let's do it.
We started with a source that was designed simply to help English learners practice listening to past tense verbs.
Just looking for those ed sounds.
Right. And we observed how slowing down the pace of speech, while initially intended just to make those sounds audible, actually forces a deeper mindfulness about how we recount our memories.
It makes every step deliberate.
Then we explored the philosophy of sightseeing. We came to understand that famous places carry real historical weight that shouldn't be dismissed as just touristy.
They're famous for a reason.
We confronted the modern paradox, where our urge to capture a memory on our phones often prevents us from actually experiencing the memory.
Stopping bagging the water and start swimming.
Exactly. We weighed the sensory adventure of local pizza and pasta against the psychological safety of global fast food.
Finding the adventure for your mouth.
And finally, we examined the absolute necessity of unplugging. We learned that presence is not just a physical state.
No, it requires intentionally cutting the digital cords that keep our minds trapped in our daily obligations.
Keeping in mind our special focus today on clear, deliberate language, I think this deep dive proves that accessible vocabulary does not limit the depth of the ideas you can explore.
Not at all. The Jasmine Podcast demonstrated that you really do not need complex jargon to articulate the modern human condition.
The most profound truths are often the most direct.
Like Sarah's observation.
Yes. Her observation that an open email means the mind is still at work. That is a highly complex psychological concept, but it is delivered in absolute plain English.
Plain English that hits very hard.
It really does. So as we wrap up this journey today, I want to leave you, the listener, with one final thought.
Something to ponder.
Something to seriously consider the next time you pack a bag and leave home.
A thought that connects Lily's urge to take hundreds of photos
Right.
with her ultimate realization of freedom when she put her phone away.
Right. So think about this. If we define a truly successful holiday by our ability to completely unplug.
To become untethered from our daily responsibilities.
Exactly. Does capturing hundreds of photos to prove we were there secretly plug us right back into the modern performance of life?
That is a tough question.
Are we truly experiencing a new culture? Or are we just gathering content to broadcast our lives back home?
Wow.
Next time you travel, next time you're standing in front of something ancient and beautiful, ask yourself, is the camera your tool? Or are you its tourist? Think about it.
A crucial question for the modern traveler.
It really is. Thank you for taking the time to join us on this deep dive. We hope this relaxed pace gave you the space to think and that you walk away with a lasting souvenir of words. Until next time.